Here's an introduction to the three main campus rulebooks. This is a tutorial I created to help students orient to the campus environment. And I'm going to go through the three main rulebooks that govern university life and community life. And hopefully at the end of this presentation, the reader or the student advocate or the audience member will understand the rules that govern community life within the university and will know basically what kind of rules he's subject to and how to responsibly participate as he advocates for his cause on a university campus. So, as we talked about before, in the previous article, we discussed how respect for authority is the only viable path to campus advocacy success. In this article, we'll look at the practical side of this view and examine the three main campus rulebooks that every student needs to know to have success in campus advocacy. These rulebooks represent the advocate's most immediate counter with campus authority. Overall, the rulebooks express campus standards, tell how campus processes work, describe authority roles within the campus environment. They tell of student rights, which are important for advocates. And overall, they give a good orientation to community life, without which it'd be much more difficult to successfully advocate for one's cause. So that's our goal today, is to go through the three campus rulebooks. Here's the next one. At the end of this presentation, the audience will have a better understanding of internal higher education regulation, will know the tools regulation offers for one's campus advocacy, and will know how campus regulation helps orient the advocate to the campus and to form the best strategies for his on-site advocacy, especially in the light of this bureaucratic environment that is the university. Therefore, let us begin. The three main rulebooks are the Regents' Rules and Regulations, the Handbook of Operating Procedures, and the Manual of Policies and Procedures for Student Affairs. These are three I selected that I felt would be the most relevant. There are rulebooks galore in bureaucracies like higher education or in government or wherever else. Always there are plenty of rulebooks, but these are the three main ones that I think an advocate needs to know to have a proper orientation for advocacy in a university environment. So let's look at the first one, the Regents' Rules and Regulations. The University of Texas System Board of Regents Rules and Regulations, or for short, just rules, make up the framework of higher education policy for UT System, and this is including for UT Tyler. The rules convey the board's expectations for all of UT System. They identify roles and responsibilities of UT System authorities, such as the board itself, the system chancellor, the general counsel, and the local university president. They describe both student rights and privileges at the system level, and they overall give a good orientation to UC System community life from the system level or at the system level. Now let's look at how. As we said, the UT System, the rules and regulations, firstly, make up UT System's policy framework. All institutions are subject to the Regents' Rules and Regulations. This includes UT El Paso, UT Arlington, and even our own campus for those of us here for UT Tyler. The subjects they discuss are things like how to run the administration, how to administer the UT system, personnel issues, how to deal with investments and financial gifts, academic issues like scholastic honesty, and more. Overall, the rules make up higher education policy throughout all of UT system, and they're essential that students would know them. So it makes up the policy framework. A second function of the rules and regulations is that they identify system roles and responsibilities. They identify UT system authorities' roles and their responsibilities. This includes for such entities as the Board of Regents, which is the governing board of UT system, the system chancellor, the general counsel, or the UT system lawyer, local university president, and even the faculty. These descriptions give students a good orientation of what roles other community members play within the university community and how he fits into the bigger picture beyond just his role at the university. The roles and responsibility descriptions within the Regents rules give students a good orientation to the broader UT system community. So that's the second benefit. The rules identify system roles and responsibilities. Thirdly, a third benefit to the Regents rules is that they describe both student rights and privileges at the UT system level. For example, Regents Rule 50302 states that students have the right to participate in the selection and periodic review of their campus food service provider. At UT Tyler, this is Sodexo. This right to participate in the provider's selection and performance review empowers students regarding their campus food service quality. So in other words, if you're a student, you got to say in the quality of food service at UT Tyler. Rules also empower students with the right to organize in a student government, or for this student government to be the official forum of student opinion to the Board of Regents. That's Rule 50203. Overall, the rules and regulations empower students with rights, which come or start at the system level, thanks to the rules and regulations. Therefore, students can improve their negotiating position with campus authorities by utilizing these rights and privileges for them at the system level. In summary, the rules make up UT System's policy framework. They describe the UT System's authorities' roles and responsibilities. They describe student rights at the system level. And they give a good orientation to UT System from the top system level. Therefore, all advocates should know and be familiar with the rules and regulations so they can improve their negotiating position and be successful in campus advocacy within UT System's community life, starting from the system level. And that's the rules and regulations. The second, whoops, I skipped one. The second rule book that's important to note is the Handbook of Operating Procedures. The Handbook of Operating Procedures is the local university's operational handbook. It exists to comply with the Regents' rules by issuing policies that govern the local university. Now, it's important to note that the Handbook of Operating Procedures, or HOP, supplements the Regents' rules, but does not replace them. As well, it also describes university roles and responsibilities, defines student rights at university level, states institutional positions on special topics like campus policing, scholastic honesty, etc. And overall, HOP gives students a good orientation. Oh, it should say, whoops, it should say university life at the university level, at the local level. All right, so let's look into this a little further. The Handbook of Operating Procedures, or HOP, supplements the Regents' rules rather than replaces them. The Regents' rules, therefore, if the two conflict, that is, if the Regents' rules conflict, or if HOP conflicts with the Regents' rule, then the Regents' rules prevail. So HOP governs the UT system, the UT institution at the local level, meaning the university, and supplements or adds to the rules where the rules have not already spoken. Now, just a quick word about this. When HOP does not conflict with the Regents' rules, then HOP controls at the local level, and the local institution is free to establish policies that govern its campus in this area. Okay, so for example, the local institution may make its own grade appeal policy based on Regents' Rules 50101, Student Conduct and Discipline, which states local universities have the right to regulate student conduct. Therefore, local universities establish policies that allow students to appeal grades. So the local university has its own policy for grade appeals, which it lists in the Handbook of Operating Procedures. Now, this is just an example of how HOP supplements rather than replaces the Regents' rules. Under the rules, local universities govern their institution through the Handbook of Operating Procedures. Okay, so HOP supplements rather than replaces. It adds to rather than overrules the Regents' rules. That's an important distinction. A second benefit to HOP is that it defines local roles and responsibilities for university authorities. For instance, HOPS describes the role of the university president, the college dean, of academic departments, and as well as both faculty and student governments. HOP describes other university members' roles, which can help the student understand where he fits in the larger university community by explaining the university governance structure. HOP defines roles and responsibilities at the university level. Now, of course, as we said before with the Regents' rules, here now at the local level, it's HOP that outlines student rights and privileges at the local university level. For instance, HOP at UT Tyler's HOP, Policy 7.05, freedom of expression, it affirms students' rights to, quote, assemble, to speak, and to attempt to attract the attention of others, and corresponding rights, to assemble, to speak, and to attempt to attract the attention of others, and corresponding rights to hear the speech of others when they choose. Now, affirmative provisions as these help protect student rights on the campus level. And therefore, advocates should familiarize themselves with HOP to use these rights for their local campus advocacy. So in other words, if you're an advocate, you got to know HOP because you got tools here. You got rights, you got authority. You can pull on these rights. You can call on these rights to make use of these rights, to advocate, to speak, to get your message out, to organize. All right, so rights are important, and HOP is where your rights are on the local level. And that's the third one. The fourth benefit of HOP is that it states the university's approach to special topics through official position statements. For example, HOP conveys the institution's position on issues such as campus policing, faculty research, concealed handgun carry policy, academic policy, or use of artificial intelligence, whatever. Everything and anything you could probably think of. HOP speaks to these when they're important issues. Let's see here. HOP helped students know how to form their negotiating position with authorities, and thereby how to form effective strategies by which they can address these topics according to their interests. So whatever your favorite flavor of pudding is, okay, whether you're into campus policing, whether you're into artificial intelligence, whether you want to know about research, whatever your thing is, look into the HOP and see if the university already has a position on that. And I'm not affirming or opposing any particular view here. I'm just saying that the university may have already spoken on these issues that may be important to you. And therefore, you want to make sure you see what the university has said so you can adjust your strategy to accord to the issues that you believe are important. And you'll find that kind of stuff right here in the position statements within HOP. All right, that's the final benefit of HOP. In summary, HOP supplements the Regents' rules. It describes university roles and responsibilities, defines rights at university level or the local level, states institutions' position on special topics, whatever those may be. It gives a good orientation to UT system. Oh, that's a typo. Gives a good orientation to UT local institution at the local level. All right, so every student should know and understand the Handbook of Operating Procedures for effective campus advocacy at the local level. Now, finally, let's look at the Manual of Policies and Procedures, otherwise known as MOP. MOP contains the institution's policies and procedures for an area of student life that higher education calls, did I say that right? An area of university life. Okay, let me start over. MOB contains the institution's policies and procedures for an area of university life that higher education calls student life. Student life includes activities such as student conduct, official student services such as the student medical clinic or the student counseling center, student housing like residential life, and more. Overall, MOB provides policies and procedures to govern this area of community life, namely what the university calls student life. And of course, I'm sure you anticipated, just as the previous two handbooks we looked at, or rule books we looked at, MOB also contains student rights in this area of jurisdiction, similar to the two other rule books we looked at above. For example, MOB defines permissible behavior for activities such as student expression and assembly, the use of university spaces and meeting rooms, or for addressing alleged violations of codes of conduct. Like, for example, MOB will outline due process rights for students. MOB defines permissible student behavior for campus community and identifies student rights within its policies and procedures, just as the other two rulebooks do above. In addition, MOB states student life's organizational structure and authority. For example, MOB identifies the Chief Student Affairs Officer, the Student Conduct Hearing Officer, and other roles within student life area. It also gives program overviews and their corresponding organizational structure, such as the overview of Greek life or residence life, and then their organizational structure. This information helps the student understand these entities and his relationship to them within this area of student life or campus life, which we call student life. And this, in summary, MOB is the repository of the university's student life policy, including student rights, descriptions of authority, roles, and responsibilities, as well as the organizational structure of student life programs. Therefore, every student should become familiar with the Manual of Operating Procedures for Student Affairs for successful campus advocacy. In conclusion, the Regents' Rules and Regulations, the Handbook of Operating Procedures, and the Manual of Policies and Procedures for Student Affairs all help the advocate orient to campus. From this information, the advocate can form effective strategies for relating to others, especially to authorities, and successfully participate in community life while advocating for their cause. Therefore, every student should become familiar with these three main rulebooks for campus advocacy success. And that's the end. Thank you for listening. I'm James Escott.